Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this morning's study. And we're going to continue looking at these, I guess it's really the last 7 kings of Judah and their connection to Leviticus 26. But before we do, let's have a word of prayer. Dear Father in heaven, we once again invite your presence as we open your word, and we are so grateful that we can study these things together. We're thankful for the things that we learn, the practical applications to our Christian life, the understanding of scriptures that increases our faith, and the wisdom that you give us that can encourage others and direct others to you. And so as we come before you, we ask for your Spirit to fill our hearts and minds, to guide and direct in this study, and to lead us into all truth. So be with each person here as we study together is our prayer in Jesus' name. Amen. Okay, well, good morning again, everyone. So last couple of days we've been looking at these the kings here in connection with Leviticus 26. So just a quick recap. So back in 2013, Jeff is going to be presenting the 4 7 times. And this insight of the 4 7 times with the last 7 kings of Judah, dealing with Manasseh, Ammon, Josiah, Jehoahaz, Jehoiakim, Jehoiachin, and Zedekiah. Did I miss anyone there? Manasseh, Ammon, Josiah, Jehoahaz, Jehoiakim, Jehoiachin, Zedekiah. So the last 7 kings of Judah. And that really opened up the understanding later to deal with the first 7 kings of Persia, right? So when, and Stephen had asked me a question about Raphia before this study, which I think it's something we're going to have to go over at some point again to really understand how we came to understand Daniel chapter 11. And it is pertinent to this study. Obviously, everything in the Bible is connected. But when we deal with the last 7 kings of Judah and we deal with Leviticus 26, obviously Leviticus 26 is going to mark the 25-20 for Judah, primarily, is how we apply Leviticus 26. Now, we also have Deuteronomy 28. Now, Deuteronomy 28 and Leviticus 26 are sister chapters. They cover the blessings and the curses. And we know that those, Ellen White says, regarding these, in referencing Deuteronomy 28 and Leviticus 26, that the scattering of God's people receives a partial fulfillment in the period of the judges, but a more complete fulfillment with the captivity of Israel by Assyria and Judah by Babylon. And I think there are some things that we still haven't fully settled in our minds. That is, we haven't brought all of these things together completely yet. I know, at least in my mind, there are loose threads that aren't fully, brought together. And I was thinking about it while I was talking with Jeff here, about we've been studying now like this for 6 years, and the amount of things that we've uncovered. Our understanding of the scriptures definitely has expanded. Many things that we knew cursorily that we now, I think, have a more solid footing of understanding. Of course, the scriptures, it's never ending. There's so much to learn. But I think it's this picture of, as we go back over this history of the last 7 kings of Judah and the 4 7 times, because we're going to establish this quite well, hopefully, of the things that we have learned, but also what insights it's going to give us. We don't know yet, right? But we know that there's going to be, as every time as we study, this deeper and clearer understanding gives us something more to hold on to, something that's more solid than it was in the past. So anyway, we have these kings. Now, the way that Jeff dealt with this And I have a chart on it. So let me see if I can bring that up. Now, he focused a lot on the names of the kings, right? The meanings of the names. I don't know if people remember that. So where is it? Yeah, here's the chart. So this is from a long time ago. I probably made this chart in 2014 or 15, maybe 2015. Anyway, we got the seven kings. So, and we've looked at this before. So we got Manasseh, which means causing to forget, right? And we had them lined up with these kings of Persia and the presidents of the United States, and also the emperors, beginning with Augustus, right? But anyway, just looking at the top there, we got Manasseh causing to forget. Ammon means a skilled workman. Josiah means foundation. Jehoahaz, Jehovah seizes. And then Jehoiakim and Jehoiachin are both mean somewhat the same thing, but from a different word. So to raise up or to establish, that is, or to set up. And that's the Kim and the Chin part, which is really not exactly how we would look at those words if we were going to look at them in Hebrew. And then Zedekiah, Jehovah makes right, right? So dealing with righteousness, or so Jehovah, the Ayah, that's the Jehovah at the end, and the Zedek part is righteousness, right? Now, then the other thing that when Jeff looked at this is you're going to have the 4 7 times. So those are going to be Manasseh's captivity, then Daniel's captivity in the time of Jehoiakim, in the 3rd year of Jehoiakim. We're going to look at all of this detail too. Now Jeff would mark just the kings in which this occurred. He never talked about as being Daniel's captivity. Particularly, he would focus upon the captivity of Manasseh, the captivity that happens in the time of Jehoiakim, then Jehoiachin's captivity, and then Zedekiah's captivity. So these are the 4 7 times. So Ammon, Josiah, and Jehoahaz, they're all existing within that 70 years of probation from the captivity of Manasseh in 677. Right. So there, and then with Jehoiakim, it's going to be in the 3rd year of his reign in 607 that Daniel is taken captive in the fall. Now, when we tried lining these up with the different kings, there was, well, in my opinion of it, was that there were some things that didn't really make sense to me, right? That is, either I didn't fully understand them, or I didn't understand the significance of them, of what Jeff was trying to do. But I understand that there is these parallels of these 7 kings. Now, he's going to deal with the last 7 kings of Israel as well, Jeroboam, starting with Jeroboam II, and then Zechariah, Shallum, Menahem, Pekahiah, Pekah, and Hoshea. And we never really looked at that when we dealt with the fall of ancient Israel. And Jeff never followed up with some of this. That is, the movement kept getting sidetracked, is the way that I looked at it. So, I'm kind of a completist. I try to follow something to the very end. And the movement was constantly shifting because just so much was happening so quickly within the movement itself, just the changes that were occurring within the movement, but also all of the different ideas that were coming. So if you think back, even like 2013, so through 2013, you're going to have in the spring there, Emiliano, introducing Ezra 7:9, and it's going to take a year, more than a year, for that to be understood by the movement, right? That is, understanding the first day of the first month being April 19th, and the first day of the 5th month being August 15th, right? That it's going to take a year. And if we go back, when we went back over the earlier history of the movement, things did move a lot slower. That is, light wasn't constantly bombarding us from all different directions. But that did happen in that history. And so the whole significance of the seven kings, where it just led us to, was to the first seven kings of Persia. That became the main focus. And the thing that was interesting about these kings, when we line them up, with the American presidents, Jeff only went up to the fifth of the presidents, right? So, he had Bush the first lining up with Cyrus and Manasseh, right? He had Clinton lining up with Cambyses and Ammon. He had Bush the second lining up with Josiah and Falsmurtis, right? Obama, Darius, and Jehoahaz all together, and then Trump, Xerxes, and Jehoiakim. But he never lined up, right? He said Trump was the last president of the United States. And we saw how that was fulfilled symbolically within the history of the January 6th situation. But Trump, of course, comes back again as the seventh king, and Biden ends up being that placeholder like Artabanus. And Jehoiachin, if you think about Jehoiachin, he's just there for, 3 months and 10 days. And then in the kings of, the emperors of Rome, you're going to have like 3 emperors in that year between Nero and Vespasian. So then below I have, of course, the last 7 kings of Israel. But I don't know, anybody have any thoughts about these kings and what ended up happening with that study? If people remember that, what Jeff was doing with it. It never seemed to go anywhere other than to bring us to Daniel chapter 11, verses 1 and 2, dealing with the presidents of the United States.
I don't remember only the first part of that. I remember finishing it.
Okay. Anybody else? I know different people were in the movement at different times. But this particular one from 2013, the study from 2013 of the 4-7 times. So the significance there was Jeff was presenting the 4-7 times. That is Leviticus 26, for the first time in our movement in 2013, it was presented as 4 different events. So prior to that, when this movement dealt with the 2520, we basically had Miller's 2520, where we just looked at the 7 times, the one event, basically just the one symbol, and had it from 677 to 1844. And then Hiram Edson's application, where really that isn't, that's not really a direct fulfillment of the 4-7 times. Because I think the 4-7 times apply in Leviticus 26 to Judah correctly, or directly, I should say, but to northern Israel, in a sense, indirectly. That is, we don't see 4 events when you look at the fall of northern Israel. I haven't been able to fit it into, breaking the pride of your power, wild beasts robbing you of your children, being besieged within your cities as a progressive series of events. They all just seem to happen right there at the end. So you're not going to have 7 times attached to it, is what I'm trying to say. So in 4 different events, where with Judah, you're going to have the 70 years for Manasseh, the 70 years for Daniel, together making 140 years. And then you're going to have the 70 years for the temple being the 4th one, and then the 140 years for Jehoiachin's captivity. So it's double the length of the other 70-year periods. So we're going to have to go through this just so that it's really, really clear for everyone. But I guess what I'm trying to ask about this 4-7 times, when it comes to the meaning of the names, is there something that we're missing or that we should see? Because Jeff focused upon the meanings of the names in his original presentation of this. And I didn't personally see too much about the meaning of the names as far as an application. I never really understood what he was trying to say, where he was trying to set this up. But maybe if people haven't studied what Jeff said, whether we should go back to that.
The Hitchcock book, you can get the meaning.
Yeah, well, we have the meaning of the names there. Manasseh meaning causing to forget. What I'm saying is how he was trying to put this on a line, right?
I
He was
got you.
right. So he was taking these and making this a line, and there's a kind of a logic to it, because the way that we understood the lines in the past is, the causing to forget. We would sometimes say like, well, you've lost your first love. The fourth generation fails to remember what the first generation, right? They forget their history. So those types of things would apply. So if we were going to take this as a line and put it in a line in our history, we could say Manasseh represents 1989, and then we're going to have this Ammon who's a skilled workman that would, a workman that needeth not to be shamed, rightly dividing the word of truth. So that's the increase of light, right? Then you have the laying of the foundation. So that's going to be the first angel's message is formalized. And then you would have, Jehoahaz would have to be the second angel's message arrives, right? And then Jehoiakim, Jehovah raises up. That would have to be the second angel formalized. And then Jehoiachin, Jehovah will be established. So that's midnight in the midnight cry, right? And if you see that in Millerite history, you can see how we used to have them as one waymark. And so Jehoiakim and Jehoiachin being father and son and having basically a name that means the same thing. That's sort of like midnight in the midnight cry. And then the close of probation, the arrival of the third angel's message of righteousness by faith, Zedekiah represents that. So that I understood, that makes sense to me, right? That's how I would apply that. But he tried to do this with, like if you see below there, Jeroboam II, the people will contend. Zechariah, God has remembered. Shalom, retribution. Menahem, comforter. Pekahiah, Jehovah has observed. Pekah, Jehovah sees. Hoshea, salvation. When he started to look at these other names, it seemed to me that it was sort of arbitrary how he was interpreting it. That's all I'm saying. So maybe there's something to be seen there, or maybe we were just to look at this because it led us to understanding the first 7 kings of Persia and their relationship to the presidents of the United States. So anyway, I'm just trying to put this study back into that old context where we originally had it, right? So since we're studying these kings, these last 7 kings of Judah, we need to consider how this was understood in the past, and that should give us some, maybe we can see some things that we didn't see back then, right? So I always continue to go back to older studies when things remind me of older studies that seemed incomplete. So I know not everybody studied all of those things, but you can see the logic of what Jeff was doing. It's just that he never came to a solid conclusion about what it meant, other than that we could create lines. But some of his creating of the lines didn't really make sense to me at the time. And then there was things that obviously he missed that we noticed later on. So for instance, when you have the last 7 kings of Judah, we know that there's this overturning till he comes whose right it is. Right, that's going to be, from Babylon goes Media, Persia, Greece, and then Rome. And in the time of Rome, Christ is going to come, and so Christ is the 8th king, right? And then we see that the counterfeit with the presidents of the United States, and then the papacy, and the way that they were trying to interpret that, that didn't really make any sense to me, especially based on what we studied in the past. So we have a conclusion that Trump is the seventh, not the eighth, right? Because we don't have Reagan as the first. That wouldn't make sense. It doesn't line up with the kings of Persia then. If we had Reagan as the first, we always lined up Reagan with Darius the Mede. All those types of things that come from that study. Okay. Now let's go back here. Now, and I've been working on drawing out the chronology of these kings, but while I was doing it, my computer shut down. And then had to reboot. That took 15 minutes. Okay, 10 minutes maybe. Now, here we're dealing with Jehoiakim. Now, we want to look at some of this point about this 3 years. Now, because there are different opinions regarding it. And Stephen says that he mentions it in the structure or in tabled history. So let me see if I can find that here quickly. So it says, in the days of Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came up. In his days, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came up, and Jehoiakim became his servant 3 years. Then he turned and rebelled against him. Now, so there are different opinions about the 3 years. So when Nebuchadnezzar comes up, when is that? Is this referring to the time that Daniel is taken captive? I would think not, right? Because he's going to come against him again later on, which isn't particularly mentioned in as far as like giving us, it's not mentioned in the Babylonian Chronicles that, well, it is in the Babylonian Chronicles. He's going to come in like 3 years later. So the 3rd year, and then it says 3 years, and then he turned and rebelled against him. So the question is, when is this 3 years? Let me see if I can find this quickly.
Yes, so I have it as 604 BC.
So you have it as the 604. Yeah, that's when I would have it as well. Would you know what page it's on in your latest edition of this table of history? Because I can't search up 3 years because there's lots of 3 years.
Page 63.
Page 63?
Yes.
Okay, so let's see here. Okay, I'll share the screen. Okay, so 607 BC, that's going to be the 3rd year of Jehoiakim. Nebuchadnezzar besieges Jerusalem. Daniel's taken captive to Babylon. And 70 years of the Babylonian captivity begins. Jehoiachin is anointed king when he's 18. And then in 605 BC, in the 4th year of Jehoiakim, the 1st year of Nebuchadnezzar. So that's going to be mentioned in the book of Jeremiah. And it's the 23rd year of Jeremiah's prophesying. So this clue that when that is, it definitely cannot be the same as the 3rd year of Jehoiakim, right? It is. Now this is 605, so maybe you're looking at this a little bit different here. But so in the 23rd year of Jeremiah's prophecy, the prophecy of Jeremiah chapter 25 and 46, Daniel brought into court to serve Nebuchadnezzar. Baruch writes the words of the Lord by the mouth of Jeremiah and a roll of a book and proclaims the words on a fast day in Jerusalem. Jehoiakim cuts up the book with a knife and throws it in the fire. So these are all the things that happen in 605. And it's going to be in 604 that Jehoiakim rebels against Nebuchadnezzar, is what Stephen says. So how come you do it that way? So you're going from 607 to 604 as the rebellion?
Yeah, so he's basically been in, well, is that 2?
Okay, so now we do have in 604 that Nebuchadnezzar comes again to the Levant. It doesn't mention Jerusalem specifically, but in the Babylonian Chronicles it mentions Nebuchadnezzar going to that area. So you would say that Jehoiakim rebels and then Nebuchadnezzar comes and straightens things out again? Is that what happens?
Well, then 3 years, is that not from when the Babylonian captivity begins? Is it not a matter of taking 607 and then minus 3, 604?
Yeah, see, I don't do it that way. Right? So, yeah, so different people have different ways in which they understand that history of what it refers to about these 3 years. So we're going to have to try to sort that out if there's some way that we can understand it. Now we know that it says in verse 2 that the Lord sent against the bands of the Chaldees, so that's the Babylonians, right? Syrians, Moabites, children of Ammon, and he sent them against Judah to destroy it according to the word of the Lord, which he spake by his servants, the prophets. So we don't have particular records of all of those things happening, right? Just other than this verse telling us that this happens. So let me see here. Yeah, I don't see any references in the marginal notes. Now this is in Jeremiah 35:11. So let's go here. Let's see if I can sort this out. Now, one of the things about the book of Jeremiah, is the book of Jeremiah in chronological order?
No.
Now, why not? Why is it all mixed up? I mean, why didn't they put it in order as a book?
I don't think they would want to.
Okay, why?
I would think there would have to be some structure as to the prophecies, why they're given.
Okay, so remember that the book of Jeremiah, it's going to be rewritten, right? Because he's going to be reading the book of Jeremiah and then he's going to be burning it, right? You understand what I'm talking about?
Yes.
So I've tried to figure this out. I mean, I actually have a book where the guy tries to put the stuff in order, put the book of Jeremiah in order, all the different sections. And different people have some disagreements about it, but it's generally agreed that it's not in order. And I sort of take that as symbolic in the fact that it was cut up, even though, it was cut up and burnt, but, and then rewritten, right? So it had to be by Baruch. But anyway, so when we look at these sections, because we have here in Jeremiah 35, we're going to have, so I'll go here, I'll show you this. Okay, it came to pass when Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came up into the land that we said, come, let us go to Jerusalem for fear of the army of the Chaldees and for fear of the army of the Syrians. So we dwell at Jerusalem. Then came the word of the Lord unto Jeremiah, saying, thus saith the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, go and tell the men of Judah and the inhabitants of Jerusalem, will ye not receive instruction to hearken to my words, saith the Lord. Now, there's a whole bunch of stuff dealing here with Rechab and his sons in this context. But the thing is, they're going to talk here about the Syrians and the army of the Chaldees. Let me see here. I'm going to have to go back and read this whole context. The word which came unto Jeremiah from the Lord in the days of Jehoiakim, the son of Josiah, king of Judah. So when we're dealing with, like, for instance, Jeremiah, let's go back here. So we're going to have the 70 years captivity. That's going to be in the 4th year of Jehoiakim, the son of Josiah, king of Judah. That the first year was the first year of Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon. So in Stephen's chart, he's going to have that as 605. Now, when it says it's the first year in this context, it's actually not still his first year. Like, it's the year in which he becomes king, but his first year technically starts in the spring of 604, right? That is, according to the Babylonian Chronicles, his dad is going to die while Nebuchadnezzar's at the Battle of Carchemish, the famous Battle of Carchemish. His dad is going to die. He's going to defeat Egypt at the Battle of Carchemish. And then he's going to hear about his dad's death. He's going to rush back through the desert to the city of Babylon to get his throne. So this is in 605. And then in 604, he's going to begin some more campaigns in the Levant, basically solidifying the territory that to protect it from Egypt, right? Even though he defeated Egypt, he has to solidify his protection racket there in the Levant, because the Levant's pretty profitable place for Babylon. So that's going to be in 604. So technically his first year is in 604, but this is called his first year from the Jews' perspective in the context that he's now the king. But remember, when Daniel's taken captive, he's not actually the king of Babylon, even though he's called the king of Babylon in Daniel chapter 1. So I know this is a little bit scattered, jumping around here, but you can see that we sort of have to do this to fit all of this together. So anyway, we have this being the first year of Nebuchadnezzar. And then Stephen had mentioned from the 13th year of Josiah, the son of Ammon, king of Judah, even unto this day, that is the 23rd year of his ministry. So this is the 23rd year of his ministry. His ministry began in 620, what is it here? 627? Is that what we have? And then you just subtract 23 and you get 604, but we don't subtract because it's the 23rd year, not 23 years. So it'd be 605. So this is in 605. That is the first year and the fourth year of Jehoiakim, right? And if the third year of Jehoiakim was the fourth year of Jehoiakim, as some people try to say, like they say this is the same year, then you would have real problems with Jehoiakim's reign and Jeremiah's. It wouldn't work, is all I'm trying to say. Okay, so that's chapter 25. Chapter 26, at the beginning of the reign of Jehoiakim, the son of Josiah, king of Judah, came this word from the Lord. So you can see that's going to be earlier. It's going to talk about at the beginning of the reign of Jehoiakim that they're going to have this yoke. Hananiah, the false prophet, at the beginning of the reign of Zedekiah, king of Judah, in the fourth year, in the 5th month. So now we're all the way to Zedekiah's reign, that we're going to have this 2 full years thing. Jeremiah's letter to the exiles, restoration of Israel and Judah. So all these things just seem to be out of order, is all I'm trying to show here. The word of the Lord that came to Jeremiah from the Lord in the 10th year of Zedekiah, king of Judah, which was the 18th year of Nebuchadnezzar, right? And the word which came unto Jeremiah from the Lord when Nebuchadnezzar was king of Babylon and all of his army and the kings of the earth in his dominion. So time of Zedekiah. And then we get to this obedience of the Rechabites. So what we're trying to establish is this 3 years, when he says he served him 3 years and at the end of 3 years he rebelled. The question is, when is that 3 years? So this dealing with the Rechabites, we're familiar with this story. So they're just recounting some of this history. So this is the word which came unto Jeremiah from the Lord in the days of Jehoiakim, the son of Josiah, king of Judah. So you can see we're going back to the time of Jehoiakim, even though the previous chapters, some were dealing with the time of Zedekiah. Okay, go unto the house of the Rechabites and speak unto them and bring them into the house of the Lord, into one of the chambers, and give them wine to drink. And then I took Jaazaniah, the son of Jeremiah, the son of Habazaniah, and his brethren, and all his sons, and the whole house of the Rechabites. And I brought them into the house of the Lord, into the chamber of the sons of Hanan, the son of Igdaliah, a man of God, which was by the chamber of the princes, which was above the chamber of Maaseiah, the son of Shallum, the keeper of the door. And I set before the sons of the house of the Rechabites pots full of wine and cups, and I said unto them, Drink ye wine. And they said, We will drink no wine, for Jonadab the son of Rechab, our father, commanded us, saying, Ye shall drink no wine, neither ye nor your sons forever. Neither shall ye build house, nor sow seed, nor plant vineyard, nor have any, but all your days ye shall dwell in tents, that ye may live many days in the land where ye be strangers. Thus we have obeyed the voice of Jonadab the son of Rechab, our father, in all that he hath charged us, to drink no wine all of our days, we, our wives, our sons, nor our daughters, nor to build houses for us to dwell in, neither have we vineyard, nor field, nor seed. But we have dwelt in tents, and have obeyed and done according to all that Jonadab our father commanded us. But it came to pass, when Nebuchadnezzar king of Babylon came up into the land, that we said, Come, let us go to Jerusalem, for fear of the army of the Chaldeans, and for fear of the army of the Syrians. So we dwelt at Jerusalem. Then came the word of the Lord unto Jeremiah, saying, Thus saith the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, Go and tell the men of Judah, the inhabitants of Jerusalem, Will ye not receive instruction to hearken to my words, saith the Lord? The words of Jonadab the son of Rechab, that he commanded his sons not to drink wine, are performed, for unto this day they drink none, but obey their father's commandment. Notwithstanding, I have spoken unto you, rising early and speaking, but ye hearken not unto me. So the whole purpose of this story is to illustrate, they show as an illustration, as a rebuke against Judah and Jerusalem. Now, the point that we make here, though, is about these bands of the Syrians, which it talked about. So it says that the Chaldeans and the Syrians and the Ammonites and etc., Moab, are going to come against God's people at Jerusalem and Judah during this period of time. So here we have the Syrians mentioned in this context. So one thing that we're going to say is that it's happening in the time of the reign of Jehoiakim, that this is occurring, right? So we have Babylon coming in, but we also have Syria, Moab, Ammon, right? These different groups against God's people. So if we go back then to try to understand this period of 3 years, so he became his servant 3 years. Let me see here. I can't remember which ones comment on this. So here it says so this would agree more with what Stephen has said. That is, in his days, 605 BC, which was the third completed and fourth commencing year of Jehoiakim. Yeah, Angela mentions a fourfold destruction in verse 2, right? So you're going to have the Chaldees, the Syrians, the Moabites, and the Ammonites, right? Thanks for mentioning that. Okay, mentioned his name. So here's what he says. So this is this is the position that I had, roughly. From 605 to 602, Jehoiakim rebelled because he knew Nebuchadnezzar to be engaged in important wars in some other parts of Asia. So the way that most people look at this is this 3 years is going to be not from 607, but it's going to be from here he has 605 to 602. Now, and that is, he's counting that 605 was the third completed and the fourth commencing year of Jehoiakim, right? So that's the way that we would look at it. So he has the same chronology that we have, as far as 607 is going to be the third year. Let me see, is he doing that the same? So yeah, or is he doing this differently? No, he's going to have 605 is the third completed and the fourth commencing. So that's different than our chronology. Okay, so he's a year off. Okay, so this says, this man so famous in the writings of the prophets was the son of Nabopolassar. He was sent by his father against the rulers of several provinces that had revolted, and he took Carchemish and all that belonged to the Egyptians from the Euphrates to the Nile. Jehoiakim, who was tributary to Necho, king of Egypt, he attacked and reduced and obliged to become tributary to Babylon. At the end of 3 years, he revolted, and then a mixed army of Chaldeans, Syrians, Moabites, and Ammonites was sent against him, who ravaged the country and took 3,023 prisoners, who they brought to Babylon. So they give us Jeremiah 52. So this is just talking about Nebuchadnezzar taking these captives. Okay, and that's going to be in the 18th year of Nebuchadnezzar. So that's quite a bit later. That's going to be in the time of Zedekiah. Okay, how do we sort through this? Okay, so this is Keel and Delich. In his days, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came up, and Jehoiakim became a subject to him 3 years. Then he revolted from him again. It's going to have a whole bunch of stuff about archaeology here. So 605 to 562. So this chronology is different. So that should be 606 to 561. With regard to his first campaign against Jerusalem, it is stated in 2 Chronicles 36:6 that against him Jehoiakim came up Nebuchadnezzar and bound him with brass chains to carry him to Babylon. And in Daniel 1, verse 1 and 2, in that the year 3 of the reign of Jehoiakim, Nebuchadnezzar came up against Jerusalem and besieged it. And the Lord gave Jehoiakim, the king of Judah, into his hand and a portion of the holy vessels, and he brought them, the vessels, into the land of Shinar, unto the house of his God. Okay, and he admits that all three passages relate to Nebuchadnezzar's first expedition against Jehoiakim and the first taking of Jerusalem by the king of Babylon, and rejects the alteration to lead them to Babylon. Okay, so there's all these different views that he's presenting. So let's look at 2 Chronicles 36. What it says there. Okay. Here it says, the people of the land took Jehoahaz, the son of Josiah, and made him king in his father's stead in Jerusalem. Jehoahaz was 23 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 3 months in Jerusalem. And the king of Egypt put him down at Jerusalem and condemned the land in 100 talents of silver and a talent of gold. So that's the price they had to pay. And the king of Egypt made Eliakim, his brother, king over Judah and Jerusalem, and turned his name to Jehoiakim. And Necho took Jehoahaz, his brother, and carried him to Egypt. So we know that Jehoiakim is placed on the throne by Egypt, right? Jehoahaz is taken captive. Now, Jehoiakim was 25 years old when he began to reign. He reigned 11 years in Jerusalem, which means he only got to live to be 36. And he did that which was evil in the sight of the Lord his God. Against him came up Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, and bound him in fetters to carry him to Babylon. Nebuchadnezzar also carried of the vessels of the house of the Lord to Babylon and put them in the temple at Babylon. Now, when we deal with this, see, people are going to interpret this differently. So when does Nebuchadnezzar bind him with fetters and carry him to Babylon? Right? There's a whole bunch of different opinions about what happens to Jehoiakim and what different verses refer to him at different times, if that makes sense. So we know that Nebuchadnezzar is going to come against Jehoiachin and take him captive, right? But if we read this here, against him came up Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, and bound him in fetters to carry him to Babylon. When does that occur? Any thoughts on this? Like you see, yep, Stephen?
My thoughts, yeah, so my thoughts is planning to do this. He was going to take him to Babylon, but then he ended up just burial of an ass that he then built the walls of Jerusalem. He didn't actually go to Babylon.
Okay. So some people, like Archbishop Usher believes that Jehoiakim remained 3 years after this tributary to the Chaldeans, and that this is from this period that the 70 years captivity predicted by Jeremiah is to be reckoned. So Usher had some different ideas about some of that. But yeah, so the question is this referring to, like, you're saying that it's he bound him in fetters to carry him to Babylon, but he didn't? Is that what you're saying?
Well, you're saying that he did go to Babylon, but then he came back again?
I'm not saying that at all.
Well,
Because
Jeremiah says he was a burial of an ass that he's built the walls of Jerusalem.
you're saying that he dies in Jerusalem?
Yeah, so Jeremiah 22, verses 18 and 19, speaks of his burial.
Therefore, thus saith the Lord concerning Jehoiakim, the son of Josiah, king of Judah, they shall not lament for him, saying, Ah, my brother, or Ah, my sister. They shall not lament for him, saying, Ah, Lord, or Ah, his glory. He shall be buried with the burial of an ass, drawn and cast forth beyond the gates of Jerusalem. So, how are you interpreting this?
But he's killed. It's Jerusalem.
Okay.
Seems,
Yeah, this is going to take a little bit to sort out.
yeah, so it sounds like he's drawn and cast forth as if his dead body's just thrown about beyond the gates of Jerusalem.
Yeah, but you're taking it more literally. I'm taking it more symbolically.
Yes.
Right.
Jeremiah later, the book says that his dead body shall be cast out in the day to the heat and in the night to the frost. So that's Jeremiah 6, verse 30.
Jeremiah 6.
36, verse 30.
Oh, 36:30. Okay. Okay. And thou shalt say to Jehoiakim, king of Judah, thus saith the Lord, thou hast burned this roll, saying, why hast thou written therein, saying, the king of Babylon shall surely come and destroy this land, and shall cause to cease from thence man and beast. Therefore, thus saith the Lord of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, he shall have none to sit upon the throne of David, and his dead body shall be cast out in the day of the heat and in the night of the frost. And I will punish him and his seed and his servants for their iniquity, and I will bring upon them and upon the inhabitants of Jerusalem and upon the men of Judah all the evil that I have pronounced against them, but they hearkened not. Right, so this is going to be there. Then Jeremiah took another roll and gave it to Baruch the scribe, the son of Neriah, who wrote therein from the mouth of Jeremiah all the words of the book which Jehoiakim the king of Judah had burned in the fire, and there were added besides unto them many like words. Right, so this is the story in the context of this story of reading Jehoiakim burns Jeremiah's scroll. Right, so this came to pass in the 4th year of Jehoiakim, the son of Josiah, king of Judah, that this word came unto Jeremiah from the Lord. Take thee a roll of a book and write therein all the words that I have spoken unto thee against Israel and against Judah and against all the nations from the day I spake unto thee from the days of Josiah even unto this day. So he's going to write the book of Jeremiah. And it may be that the house of Judah will hear all the evil which I purpose to do unto them, that they may return every man from his evil way. And then Jeremiah called Baruch the son of Neriah, and Baruch wrote from the mouth of Jeremiah all the words of the Lord which he had spoken unto him upon a roll of a book. And Jeremiah commanded Baruch, saying, I am shut up, I cannot go into the house of the Lord. Therefore go thou and read in the roll thou hast written from my mouth the words of the Lord in the ears of the people in the Lord's house upon the fasting day, and also thou shalt read them in the ears of Judah that come out of their cities. It may be they will present their supplication before the Lord, and I will return every one from his evil way, for great is the anger and the fury that the Lord hath pronounced against his people. And Baruch, son of Neriah, did according to all that Jeremiah the prophet commanded him, reading in the book the words of the Lord in the Lord's house. It came to pass in the 5th year of Jehoiakim, the son of Josiah, king of Judah, in the 9th month, that they proclaimed a fast before the Lord. So here we have another chronological aspect, the 5th year of Jehoiakim. And in the 9th month, that they proclaimed a fast before the Lord. So when would that be? If it's in the 5th year in the 9th month. So the 3rd year was from 607 to 606. Stephen?
Maybe that's the
Okay, I didn't catch everything you said. You kind of got cut off a bit.
So around 605, 604, or not?
Okay, so yeah, so if we're going to say that it's in the 5th year, we know that the 3rd year was from the fall of 607 to 606. The 4th year was from the fall of 606 to the fall of 605, right? That's correct. And then we're going to go from the fall of 605 to the fall of, so that's going to, I forgot where I was because I'm trying to read and count at the same time. So it would be in the 9th month, which is roughly December to Jan. Mostly it's December, right? So if we got, so this would be the end of 605 BC, right? Is that what we're saying?
Yeah, 604.
The end of 604, you're saying, or the end of 605?
I think 604. January.
Okay, yeah. So the end of 604, because 607, and that's the third year,
Oh,
and then
604. January 604.
January of 604. Okay.
Oh, so December 605, January 604.
Okay. Yeah. So in 604 BC, the first day of the 10th month is January 4th. So so it's probably 605. That makes sense. So so December of 605, maybe into January. It doesn't say what day of the month. Okay, so that makes sense now. But they're going to have a fast, so it's probably in December. Okay, so then anyway, he's going to cut this book up. He's going to burn it, and then he's going to have to recite the book again to Baruch. And then there's going to add other things. Obviously, this wouldn't have been in the book that was given to Jehoiakim to read because it's the story about what happened. So, but the fact is, we have all of these different parts of this book of Jeremiah that was written up to that point is going to be burned in the fire by Jehoiakim. So that's fairly early on. So obviously, all the stuff about Zedekiah, that's going to be written later in the book of Jeremiah. You have a comment there, Stephen? No. But you can see Jeremiah, we need to understand Jeremiah better. It's part of because Jeremiah is the prophet, from the 13th year of Josiah to the destruction of Jerusalem in, 586. So he's going to be during that whole period. But he has this book that is not in chronological order. It's all scrambled up. And I think there's a symbolic reason for that, right? Because it's not logical to have the book in that order. And there's nothing structural that I can see about the order of the book it makes no sense. But yet that's how we have the book Jeremiah. All these stories, and they'll say something happens in this year of this king, but it's not in order. And so we would have to put it in order to understand it better. So what could that be representing? What do we think is happening here about this history, what we're studying? What is it that we are trying to do? Do you understand the question? Because Dwight knew that the book's not in order. But does anybody know why it's not in order? Why he would have his book in such a disarray?
Well, maybe God allowed it to keep us studying it.
Well, I think that's part of it. There's some study that needs to be done. But what would that represent symbolically? Is it a puzzle?
I would say it's a puzzle, yeah.
Yeah, so it's a puzzle where all the pieces are mixed up and we have to put them in order. So I think it's one of the things we need to do is in sorting out this history is we realize that there's a puzzle that needs to be set in order.
And generally speaking, the whole Bible's like that. A lot of scriptures are like that.
Yeah. But usually you don't have it as a book, that it's all scrambled, right?
Yeah.
So there's something about Jeremiah and why it's scrambled. And it has something to do with it being cut up into pieces and burned in the fire. That's what I believe. I believe that there's something symbolic about what Jehoiakim is doing that represents something that has happened in our history. So I think it's relating to our history. Can we say that biblical chronology is like that. And is this also showing about a rejection of the 2520 by the Seventh-day Adventist Church? Because I think all of this has to relate to an understanding of the 2520. Personally, that's my.
Could we say that the burning of the scroll was like the rejection of the 2520, and the church has therefore lost its prophetic message, its foundation?
Mm-hmm. And yeah, it's rejected the history. It's rejected the messages of rebuke and warning. But then they're put together in a way that's a puzzle. That is, we have to unravel this puzzle to understand it. Now, one of the things that people have had as an objection to the 2520 is it's too complicated, right? That's a common rejection argument by Adventists. It's too complicated. We don't need it. It's supposed to be as simple for a child to understand. You have all these complications. Of course, they don't say that about the 2300 days. Like, people say, well, why do you have to write so much? If it's truth, you shouldn't have to, write a paper on it somehow. And yet the Adventist Church for the 2300 days has written volumes and volumes and volumes, which the average person can't read or understand. And definitely the 2300 days is not an easy prophecy, no matter what Adventists imagine. Because I've presented the 2300 days, I've presented the 70 weeks, and I've presented the 2520. And out of all of them, I would say the easiest to present to people is the 2520. It doesn't require as much, but this has been buried. It's been, well, in this case, cut up and then burned. but we're given it back in these pieces that we have to put together. And part of this is this chronology. And I would say that this history, when I looked at it in one of the Sabbath School quarterlies addressed this history very cursorily. They didn't get things right, because it's not understood by Adventists. Adventists don't care. People generally, the Adventist Church doesn't really care about prophecy, and Adventists don't care about prophecy unless it's speculative. Some Adventists like really speculative prophecy about what's happening in the newspaper. But this sort of foundational study where we systematically go through and sort through these problems, and we have a lot of sorting to do, right? So to get this whole history, we need to know what Jeremiah is writing. Now, most of my work in this history is Ezekiel. Now, Ezekiel, of course, just deals with Jehoiakim's captivity and Zedekiah. So as far as Jeremiah, I've had cursory work on it. I've gone through and seen how you would put this together, the different chapters, how you would put them in order. But I do think we need to do that. We need to sort out this history, exactly what's happening. Now, so as far as the 3 years are concerned, we see that there are different opinions. Now, the other thing that's really tough is understanding exactly how Jehoiakim came to the throne and why Nebuchadnezzar comes and takes him off the throne and puts him in prison 3 months after he's on the throne. And it's a little bit curious because, we do have this account in the Babylonian Chronicles. And I'm just going to go there. I know I had it open, but I don't know where it is. Hopefully you guys are going to enjoy going through all of this. Now, we looked at this before. This is the Jerusalem Chronicle, ABC 5. And so to put all this history together, and I think part of the problem was, a lot of the commentaries, these old commentaries, they didn't have this document, right? So when they're trying to put together this chronology, they don't have the actual, Jerusalem Chronicle, as it's called, or the Babylonian Chronicles, ABC 5, to know exactly how those years work. Now, you're going to have this in the 21st year, the king Achab, that's Nabopolassar, Nebuchadnezzar's dad, stayed in his own land, and Nebuchadnezzar, his eldest son, the crown prince, mustered the Babylonian army and took command of his troops. He marched to Carchemish, which is on the bank of the Euphrates, and crossed the river to go against the Egyptian army which lay in Carchemish. And they fought with each other, and the Egyptian army withdrew before him. And he accomplished their defeat and beat them to non-existence. Sounds like Trump. As for the rest of the Egyptian army, which had escaped from the defeat so quickly that no weapon had reached them, in the district of Hamath, the Babylonian troops overtook and defeated them, so that not a single man escaped to his own country. At that time, Nebuchadnezzar conquered the whole area of Hamath. For 21 years, Nabopolassar had been king of Babylon, when on the 8th of Av, or Abu, he went to his destiny in the month Elulu. So Abu, that's the 5th month, right? Tammuz is the 4th month. Av is the 5th month. The 10th of Av is when the temple was destroyed. So here, this is on the 8th of Av. He went to his destiny, and in the month Elulu, that's the 6th month, Nebuchadnezzar returned to Babylon. And it says on the 1st of Elulu, Elulu 1, he sat on the royal throne of Babylon. So it says that on the 8th of Av, his dad is going to die, and he's going to return to the throne on the 1st of the next month. So that's roughly 3 weeks. So that's pretty fast. So that means he would have had his dad die, somebody tell him that his dad died, and then he has to return to Babylon, right? And then it says, in the accession year, Nebuchadnezzar went back again to the Hatti land until the month of Sabbatu. So that's going to be the 10th month, right? So in the 5th month, his dad dies. On the first day of the 6th month, he's back in Babylon, sitting upon the throne. And then he's going to continue. He's going to go back to the Hatti land, Palestine, the Levant. And he's going to stay there until the 10th month. He marched unopposed through the Hatti land. In the month of Sabbatu, he took heavy tribute of the Hatti territory in Babylon. So this is going to be in the fall of 605, or the winter of 605. And that's kind of a strange time for kings to do this, but they do it. Babylon would sometimes go in that area at that time of year, even though it can be rainy. And he took the hands of Bel and the son of Bel and celebrated the Akitu festival. So in the month Nisanu, that is in the spring, that's when he actually begins his first year, right? So he has his accession year. His dad dies, so he has an accession year that's going to go from basically the 5th month all the way to the end of the 12th month. So basically, he has a 7-month accession year before he becomes technically the king of Babylon. And that's going to be in 604. So whatever people, now what some people do is they will say, well, this is when Daniel was taken captive. But you can see that that wouldn't be the 3rd year of Zedekiah, because Zedekiah's, and it wouldn't be the 4th year, right? Right? It wouldn't fit in with the way that people try to look at Zedekiah's reign, because he's going to become king in the fall of 609, and his first year is going to begin in the fall of 609. So his 3rd year begins in the fall of the 607. So if you went to like the fall of 604 or the fall of 605, right, it wouldn't fit. Right? You'd be into his, let me think here. Yes, that would be his 4th year would start in the fall of 605. And yeah. So anyway, this is how most people look at it. They say this is when Nebuchadnezzar takes Daniel captive. Okay, but it's not, right? It wouldn't fit in with the chronology that we have in the Bible. Okay, and then in the first year of Nebuchadnezzar, in the month of Simanu, so Simanu is the third month, he mustered his army and he went into the Hatti territory. He marched about unopposed in the Hatti territory until the month of Kislev. That's Kislev. That's the 9th month. So he's going to be there in 6 months. So that's going to be from the early summer of 604 until December of 604 that he's going to be in the Hatti land. And all the kings of the Hatti land came before him, and he received their heavy tribute. So that would include Jehoiakim. And he marched to the city of Ascalon and captured it in the month of Kislev. So that's going to be the last place, I guess, that he goes then. And he captured its king and plundered it and carried off spoil from it. And he turned the city into a mound and heaps of ruins. And then in the month Sabbatu, he marched back to Babylon. So in the 10th month, he's going to be going back to Babylon. And in the second year in the month Ajaru, so that is in the spring of 603. So Ajaru, I'm not sure what Ajaru is. That must be the second month. Yeah, Ayara. I've just never seen it spelt that way. The king of Akkad gathered together a powerful army and marched in the land of Hatti. And he threw down great siege towers, he from the second month, Ajaru, until the month of, which we don't know, he marched about unopposed in the Hatti land. And then you got some lines missing. And in the third year, he left. So they got broken tablets. In the fourth year, king of Akkad, the 6th year, 7th year, the 9th year. So it's going to be in this history. Let me see here. Yeah. So this is where you get in the 7th year, in the month of Kislev, king of Ahab mustered his troops, marched to the Hatti land, and besieged the city of Judah in the 2nd day of the month of Adaru. That's the 12th month. The 2nd day of the 12th month. That's going to be March 16th. They just say here February, March, but it's March 16th, 597. He captured the city he seized the city and captured the king. He appointed there a king of his own choice, so that's going to take Mattaniah and name him Zedekiah, received its heavy tribute and sent to Babylon. And in the 8th year of the month, Tebetu, the king of the Akkad, marched to the Hatti land as far as Carchemish. And in the month Tebetu. So these are going to be later in the time of Zedekiah. Okay, so here, at least this was preserved in the Babylonian Chronicles. Now, they call this the Jerusalem Chronicle. This is ABC 5. And the question is Daniel's captivity. So I need to get to ABC 4. How do I get to that? I guess I'll just do this way. So here's where I think that Daniel was taken captive, because it's not recorded in the Babylonian Chronicles, but I'll show you why. Okay. So this is Nabopolassar's chronicle. Now, Nabopolassar's the dad of Nebuchadnezzar. And so we're going to go the late years of Nabopolassar. Okay. So we're going to have here, it's the 18th year of Nabopolassar. In the month of Lulu, the king of Akkad mustered his army and following the banks of the Tigris to the mountains of Bit Hanua, right? He goes to Uratu. So it's going to go through the 19th year of his reign. And then 20th year, his army marched against the garrison of Kimuhu. 21st year, the king of Ahab stayed home while Nebuchadnezzar, his eldest son, and the crown prince mustered the army of Akkad. So that's going to be going then into ABC 5, right? Now, where is it here? So that's the 605, 604. So that's later. That's going to be the Battle of Carchemish. Where is it here? Okay, yeah, it's over here. Okay, so in the 19th year in the month Simanu, so that's going to be again the third month, the king of Akkad mustered his, and what does it say here? It doesn't, okay. His army, and Nebuchadnezzar, his eldest son, the crown prince, mustered his army. They marched to the mountains of Za, right? It's broken off. The king of Akkad left the prince and his army there while he returned to Babylon in the month of Tammuz, Dumuzi, right? So in 607, Nebuchadnezzar is going to have his own army, right? So we see his dad has an army and Nebuchadnezzar has an army. Now this is about his dad's army, right? But it's just that his army, Nebuchadnezzar, his son, the crown prince, he's going to work with his dad here, right? So they're going to work together. And then it says the king of Akkad left the prince and his army there while he returned to Babylon in the fourth month. And then it says after his departure, Nebuchadnezzar did battle at Baranati, situated in the mountains. Captured this place, set it on fire, took many prisoners. He conquered all the mountains as far as the district of Uratu. And in the 6th month, Elulu, the prince returned to Babylon. And in the month Teshritu, the 7th month, the king of Akkad mustered his army, that is his dad, and marched to Kimuhu, which is on the bank of the Euphrates. And he crossed the river, did battle against this, and so forth. And he sacked and stationed a garrison of his own. In the month Sabatu, he went home. Right. And then we're going to have in the 20th year, the army of Egypt march against the garrison. Right. We're going to have this whole thing. Now, what I'm saying is here that when it talks about 607, 606, so this is going to be from the spring of 607 to 606, this year, the 19th year of Nabopolassar's reign, that Nebuchadnezzar, his son, is going to join him in this one battle. What it doesn't tell you is what he does later, right? So the position that I have is while his dad's doing these other battles, that's when he goes to Jerusalem. So that would be when it is. It just doesn't mention it in the Babylonian Chronicles. And some people think this is a problem. They think that why would you mention everything that Nebuchadnezzar is doing with his army? Because he's not on official king business. He's just got an army, right? If you got an army, what are you going to do with it? You're going to use it, right? Especially as a young crown prince. So even though it doesn't say what he did here, it only mentions him when he joined his dad in battle. It doesn't mean that Nebuchadnezzar was not doing other things. And then when he takes on official king business, here at the end, when the king of Akkad stayed home and Nebuchadnezzar, his eldest son, the crown prince, mustered the army of Akkad. So he's going to take his dad's army now when he has this battle of Carchemish. So anyway, we're going to sort through this. I know it's a lot of things to think about. We got a lot of irons in the fire, little things that we have to resolve. But hopefully we can piece this all together, piece the book of Jeremiah together, these kings, when these different things happen, and have a complete picture. Any final thoughts before we close with prayer?
So are you suggesting then 604? That's when the 3 years begin?
That's the position I had, whether that's right or not. But that's the way that I look at it. And that rebellion happens later on in the reign. So, but yeah, there's a lot we have to sort out. So I think part of it is sorting out what happens in the book of Jeremiah, and how all of these different prophecies relate at different times. And especially, how does Jehoiakim's reign end? And how does it end up that Jehoiachin's on the throne, right? And I think we can only piece that together when we look at Jeremiah, right? When we look at 2 Kings and 2 Chronicles, it doesn't give us enough information of how that transition occurs. And there are different opinions about it. Some people teach that Jehoiakim was brought to Babylon and dies in Babylon.
Yes.
And then, right? So is that what happened? if that's the case, then, if Jehoiachin is on the throne, then why does Nebuchadnezzar then come back? Right? All these different questions that, different people have different opinions about. And then we have to look, of course, at the spirit of prophecy. She doesn't say tons about some of this history. Some of it she gives us some information, but some of it she doesn't really touch on. Okay, so anyway, we got a lot of work cut out for us. So let's close with prayer. Dear Father in heaven, we are grateful, Lord, for the time that we have had this morning. And we just ask that you can help us to continue to study on our own, that you can help us with the needs that we have throughout this day and the ministry that you've given us to others. Help us to reflect your character in all that we do. And we pray, Lord, that as we study this week, that you can continue to give us light that we can walk in, that we can obey your voice. And help us to trust fully in you is our prayer in Jesus' name. Amen.